Hello.
Josh, what's up?
What's up, Jade?
How you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm just calling to see if you've listened to that Josh Waitzkin Huberman podcast.
Oh man, I was just telling you I'm such a Josh Waitzkin fanboy. I saw you entered in the database, got really excited. And yes, I listened to it and yeah, so good. So many takeaways.
What are your initial like highlights?
Oh man, there's so many. I actually took some notes. Let me pull them up real quick. Yeah, so man, there's so many good things to cover, but actually, let's start with yours. I'm curious. I think people watching this are probably more curious what you have to say.
Okay. Well, so I think there are like two really important things that I'm really trying to implement into my um, coaching and just like the way I think about language and teaching jujitsu. Because basically, Josh talked about how like the reason this came up was because Huberman talked about how a lot of people in one discipline like chess can be extremely good, but it's hard for them to apply that knowledge outside of chess. And a lot of the like child prodigies in chess didn't really go on to do anything meaningful, whereas Josh was successful in many other domains. And basically, Josh said you can learn chess through chess specific language, or you can learn it in a more universal language, and then you can apply that universal knowledge into other areas. And he basically argued that it's just as effective to do it universally. So he just encouraged people to use more universal language instead of specific language when you're teaching. Um, and then, kind of on that same point, this was much later in the podcast, but I think it's like very connected. He talked about how when you're teaching someone who is a high performer and they've had a ton of success doing things their way, when you want to change a habit that they have, it's very hard to change it in their area where they're very practiced and experienced and have success with it. They trust their method. So if you want to change it, that's going to be very hard. And the way he worded it was it's very like calloused, and it's going to be tough to change. But if you understand what you're trying to change in a universal way, you can try and change that aspect in a different area of their life where they're not as calloused. So you practice it in a way where they're more receptive to the theme. And then they start to experience the benefits of implementing that theme in that area, and it becomes a habit in that area. And then they'll be more likely to use that habit in other areas. And eventually it will translate over into the area where you were hoping to do it initially. But just this idea of universally applying knowledge is very interesting. And it's something I've been trying to think a lot about. Yeah.
Damn, that's really good. It reminds me of the whole static versus dynamic control. And like his quote of you can learn Karpov through Kasparov, like learning the defense through the offense or learning how to play very positional closed games. Even though he's a very chaotic, open position player. Um, yeah, there's a lot we can dive in there.
Yeah. So I'll just explain like the way I've been thinking about it recently, and trying to apply it to jujitsu. So um, I've been thinking a lot about how to manage risk effectively in jujitsu and kind of just like minimize your downside. So when things go wrong, you can just kind of reboot the system and you don't end up in a bad situation. So um, instead of like teaching very specific jujitsu things, I've tried to use more like universal language. So, um, just the idea of risk management, I was just trying to think about like how to like the steps needed to assess risk and kind of figure out when you're vulnerable to that worst case scenario happening. So, at least the way I think about, you might have some opinion on this as well, but I thought first it would make sense to identify the worst case scenario. So since I studied finance in college, I tend to relate stuff to finance. So like in your personal finance, it would be like going bankrupt would be like a worst case scenario, right? So once we've identified the worst case scenario, then the second step is to identify some indicator that means if you keep going down the same road, then you're more likely to run into that worst case scenario. So this might be like maybe you have something like an emergency fund where you have like 6 months of savings, just in case something bad happens. If you're ever in a situation where you're having to dip into that emergency fund and now all of a sudden it goes from 6 months to 4 months, um, this means if you keep going down the same path, the likelihood that you're going to be bankrupt is very high. So if that's the case, you need to stop whatever you're doing, but you become very defensive and you try and get back those 6 months and then maybe more. So then once you have that indicator in place, you can do the third step and be very aggressive because you know you have the key indicator in place that prevents the worst case scenario from happening. So I think these are like the three steps. You identify the worst case scenario, identify some key indicator, and if that key indicator is in place, then you can be very aggressive because you know you're not going to run into the worst case scenario. Even if something goes bad, it's not going to be terrible, you know? Um, so this is kind of like the universal umbrella that I'm trying to teach through. And then I just try to apply it to like jujitsu specific situations. And I've been doing that the past couple weeks in class. And yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
that's super cool. Yeah, what have you been messing with in the classes in teaching these themes?
Yeah. So like for warm up stuff, we've been doing like open guard passing. And basically like if someone is, it's basically like rumble passing, right? Like you don't let them grab your legs. And if they grab your legs, you like try and reset, right? Because basically, like the worst case scenario when you're passing the guard is they enter your legs and submit you, or sweep you, or they wrestle up pretty much. And in order to do any of those things, they need their hands. So the idea is the indicator is you control their hands. If you control their hands, you can be as aggressive as you want because they're not going to be able to entangle your legs or wrestle up if they can't use their hands. But as soon as you don't control their hands, you back out and you become very hesitant. You can't be as aggressive because you don't control their hands. So this would be one example. The other example would be from the back. Like generally, it's advised that the bottom hook is more important on the back when you're attacking from the back. But the worst case scenario, in my opinion, when you're controlling the back, is someone turns to their knees and shakes you off, and now you're the bottom player, right? So the top hook is the one that prevents him from turning. So if your priority is to minimize worst case scenarios and make sure you just stay on top, the top hook is more important than the bottom hook because the top hook allows you to climb up on top. And the other important variable to making sure you get on top is your bottom arm because you want to like prop up on your elbow or your hand to make sure you build head height and hip height to make sure you get on top. So if your goal is to minimize downside, I think you play with a short top, like your seatbelt becomes very short with your bottom arm, and your top hook is just like very sticky. And even play it like with it on their far hip, like a bottom side body triangle or whatever. It's going to be very hard for them to get out and get on top if you have a bottom side body triangle. Um, so this is one thing I've been thinking about, and just to kind of bring it home, I guess, like if you're attacking from the overhook side, I wish I had, I was recording this class so I could put it on the newsletter. But like some of the angles were bad, some of the audios are bad. So I'm going to refilm it again tonight and hopefully it'll be up by the time this is here. Maybe I could put some footage or whatever. But um, if you're attacking from the overhook side, your bottom arm is your strangle arm, right? So your bottom arm, if you want to strangle someone, has to go very deep and then you can lock it up. But the problem is when your bottom arm gets deep, when your strangle fails, they can control your arm pretty well. And it's hard for you to shallow out that arm to build height. Whereas from the underhook side, your top arm's your strangle arm. So you can keep your bottom arm super shallow and almost prop up on your elbow already. And you could be super aggressive with your strangle arm. And if things start to go bad, you're immediately just like building height off your elbow and you're taking top position. So because of this, I just like the underhook side, in my opinion, is really, really good for making sure your downside is limited for that reason. Because the overhook side, basically you have to you have to make a decision whether you want to be really aggressive and go for the choke, or you want to be super conservative and keep your seatbelt really shallow so you're on your bottom elbow already. Where you don't have to make that sacrifice from the underhook side. You can be conservative with your bottom arm position, but also aggressive with your strangle.
Whoa, I like it. It's like that emergency fund, and the indicator is like, oh shit, are they going to get on top? And like, nope, I'm going to be super, pause everything. I'm going to get super aggressive. I'm staying on top. Versus if you lose that, you know, the indicator, and all of a sudden they're shaking you off, and yeah, you're on bottom. Yeah, that's really interesting. The back control, you can just transition them out, or if it fails, you transition to bottom guard or something like that, which is terrible.
Right.
So I like
And
that
then
risk management idea.
Yeah, and then from a defensive standpoint, it would be like you have your primary defensive hand in place, you have your cross grip in place, and once that's in place, that's your indicator that you can be super aggressive with your other hand. Use it to clear hooks, use it to do whatever. But as soon as the indicator is gone, you have to pause. You have to be super defensive. You have to grip fight your way back to that indicator, and then you can be super aggressive. So it's just trying to apply that universal knowledge of managing risk, and then just trying to plug it in to jujitsu specific situations. Um, but yeah, you can apply it to personal finance. The other thing I've been thinking about is like people always ask how you remember like everything. And if you start to like, if you're thinking about an idea universally, a lot of us only are at jujitsu like a few hours a week, you know? So if you're only thinking about the idea for a few hours a week, you're not going to remember it as well. But if you're trying to apply that idea to basically everything in your life, like how do I manage risk in every situation? Like I've been trying to think about how do I do it when I'm golfing? How do I do it in my finances? How do I do it in just my everyday life? So it tends to stick better. And it's like all I've been thinking about, you know? So I
Yeah.
think that's a good way to retain information as well, just thinking about things universally and applying that theme across the board.
Yeah, I remember this. I wrote down this quote from the episode, and he said, you know, Huberman was like, Why don't you think people grasp?" I forgot what he was talking about exactly. Maybe it's like the fire walking exercise or whatever. Anyway, Josh's response was, "People are really amazingly unreflective about their training process," and it just goes to show that, you know, you have this theme in mind, just a little bit of reflection of something to keep an eye out for, and then you just start to see it in all aspects of life, which is really cool. And I'll get back to that later in the episode with another point. But to go back on this point, the another thing you mentioned was like, um, maybe you can't introduce this aspect within jujitsu because they're so callous, and there's like somewhere else that you can introduce it to. And it reminded me, I think there was a years ago another episode where Josh Waitzkin was talking about how he introduces meditation to like these really high level performers. And he said the insertion point where he introduces it is during high intensity interval training. So he'll have people do high intensity interval training, um, as and then during the rest periods, like let's say you're sprinting and rest and then resting, or doing a circuit of some kind. During the rest period, he has them sit down, pay attention to the breath, and try to bring their heart rate down as just an introduction of sitting and slowing down, because it's really hard to get people who are hard charging, ambitious investment banker, whatever types, to just sit down and slow down. But in that little gap, he can begin to introduce it, and they can start to feel into that quality of slowness or being present, which I thought was really interesting.
That is very interesting. I think I need to explore different ways of doing stuff like that because when I'm thinking about it in terms of like personal finance and like golf are the examples I've been mostly thinking of it about it. Like jujitsu instructors get a bad rap for trying to be like life coaches too. So I was thinking about how to play the line of trying to speak universally without trying to be a life coach. You know, this is
Yeah,
something I need to think about more. But I
yeah.
think that's a really good example of how to um, do it well.
You know, I was talking to my old archery coach, and he said there's two, in his mind, he views there's two styles of coaches. One style where it's all about performance, it's all about skill development on the mat. These are the guys who help you become the world champion and help you develop skill as fast as you can uh, during the training session. Then there's the other style of coach where they think the value you gain from jujitsu is not about jujitsu. It's about all the life things, all these thematic things you're talking about that can spill over. And maybe these types of coaches tend to be like a lot of kids coaches tend to fall into this category. Like they know most of these kids are not going to be world champions, but what can we teach them beyond chess or beyond jujitsu by doing the sport? And I think there's a lot of value in that. And I think most of us fall into that camp of doing jujitsu or golf or a hobby for the enjoyment of the sport, but also for the other benefits we gain from the sport outside of just the little context of the sport itself. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, I think it can come across like, I think it's just important the way you present the information to not come across like you know everything, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
Uh,
that's yeah.
I think you sharing your personal examples is a good way to do it because it's kind of like leading from the front. It's like, hey, this is just how I'm thinking about it in my life, and then let them do what they will with them. Versus like, hey guys, how much emergency fund do you all have? You know, like yeah, yeah.
I want everyone's bank account information.
Send it to me next week.
Yeah.
Next week, you gotta all have $1,000 first to start. No, this relates to for me personally in jujitsu of this idea of the static versus dynamic control, and like Josh saying in his chess, like his personality is he loves the chaos and those open positions, and he likes finding the hidden harmonies in there that people can't see. And versus the other style of player, they like really controlled closed positions in chess where things you don't have to calculate as far and you can just slowly positionally close people down. And I feel like I'm the opposite of Josh Waitzkin. I like that static control. Maybe a Gordon style of slowing things down, and like the chest to chest half is a perfect example of this. And he was saying that instructor, one of his coaches, was trying to force him to be that more controlled positional style. And when he was so young, he didn't like it until later he learned you can learn one from the other. And this reminded me of oh, another example is like when you talked about Marcelo training, he's like perfect example of this dynamic style where he really likes the transition, and he would train in a way where he wouldn't hold on to positions very long, and he would just give it up and just work the transitions. And it helped Marcelo be able to see and like capitalize on tactics in very, very small openings and
Mm,
see like minute positions instead of like the major positions we all see and spend time in. So for me, I've been thinking like I really like to slow things down, get the chest to chest half, like just slow down and take a breather and then cook from there, I guess, when I can. But I've been wanting to learn the other style, this dynamic control and letting go. And it's been inspiring to think like, you know what, maybe I should, as Josh Waitzkin says, like give up that ego of having to always be dominant or like trying to be dominant in every position. Maybe when I do get the chest to chest, I can let them out and try high step passing from there instead, like and working dynamic instead. And in jujitsu, it made me think like it reminds me of Greg's conversation where he said sometimes you can control people directly via positional control or static control, or you can control people indirectly with threat, right? Where they're not going to go that way because there's a threat. And I think I have a feeling that working the dynamic stuff, like let's say you go to practice and your constraint for yourself is you're not allowed to hold any position. You got to let your ego go a little bit. You're going to be flip flopping top, bottom position, whatever. And what that affords, I think, is your ability to chain threats together in small windows versus needing these like slow down and then find your next move times. So yeah, I know it's just kind of inspiring to me to like think about working on that versus just getting the chest to chest and chilling there. You know,
mm,
you technically haven't even scored any points yet, which not good for training for comps and stuff. But yeah, that was kind of inspiring for me just personally knowing my style and my personality to want to slow things down.
sounds like we're working on opposite things. Like I'm working on I'm working on not giving stuff up and making sure, uh, nothing bad happens. But I think it's also like a little bit they're also the same in the sense that like maybe another way to think about what you're trying to work on is like right now your checkpoints seem to be very far apart. So it's like either I'm open guard passing or I'm chest to chest. And basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to get like six different checkpoints that you can be comfortable in before you can get chest to chest and be like um comfortable in that more dynamic. checkpoint transition where you tend to bounce between checkpoints more rapidly than opposed to just like staying in one spot for long periods of time. But I think, yeah, that's the kind of idea. Like the frames in which you can see are more,
Right.
as opposed to just like open guard or chest to chest half guard. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. My frames are they're big. It's like open guard, then there's like standing, then there's like kneeling, like knee shield, then there's past knee shield, and those are like three major things, but there's so many small things in between there.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's inspired me to want to play in that in between more instead of holding on to something that's not going to be there. So
And you could also think about just again, this has just kind of been on my brain, so maybe this is why I'm giving you this advice. But it could also be something like, what indicators should I be looking for where it's okay for me to move? And if I do move, they're not going to end up on top of me. Like
yeah,
if they move, I just bounce from one checkpoint to another.
right.
And maybe I had to backtrack from like, a more progressive checkpoint. I had to retreat to a more conservative checkpoint, but I didn't end up on bottom.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, maybe you could practice movement and dynamic positioning, but do it in a manner where it would apply to competition still, in the sense that you would not just be like, oh, I'm just going to go for a guillotine and like jump on the ground, hope it works kind of thing.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's cool. I do think working that transition allows you to help chain those threats together better versus being a little clunky and like it has to be this position and then this one that's so far away and then that the other one. So
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes those like it can be very hard to get attacks in static positions where the person's just super defensive. So sometimes the transition element of it kind of gives them a little bit of hope and gives them some sort of attack that they can go for, which causes them to extend a bit, and then now your attacks become more effective. I just think it's important to try to see when you want to encourage them to extend. And if they extend and their attack is successful, it's not the worst case scenario for you.
right. Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Totally. Wow, it's super cool. Very nuanced.
Yeah. And I don't have specifics. Like it's just the way I've been thinking about it. But yeah, hopefully I'll have more specifics as the weeks go by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another quote that relates to this that I wrote down is he said he doesn't believe in compartmentalization, but instead in thematic interconnectedness.
Mm.
Yeah, I really like that. It kind of touches on your theme of like learning with jujitsu, golf, personal finance, and this theme of risk through all of that.
The
Yeah.
interconnectedness is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Super cool. Um, any other takeaways or highlights?
The last, like, I basically just took some notes that I put into the database and I put hashtag coaching in there just as a way to kind of get general coaching advice. So the last thing I have under hashtag coaching um, is the idea that he touched on where again, he's talking about like peak performers and dealing with peak performers. But he said when people are at the highest level of their given discipline, there's generally a balance between brilliance and I think he used the word dysfunction. And as a coach, it's easy to see that dysfunction and say, let me fix that to make you more efficient. But then the balance is kind of thrown off, and that dysfunction is a part of the process that makes them brilliant. So a lot of coaches try and come in and prove their value by making their athlete or student more efficient, but in reality, that just kind of throws off their whole system. So basically, he said, when you're dealing with these high performers, a lot of times coaching is just more about understanding that balance before you speak and try to correct anything. And he said, basically, it's like 99% listening and understanding the process. And then you just give like little tweaks. And sometimes those tweaks are not even in the area that you're trying to um, correct, like we talked about previously.
Mhm.
Because if you try and correct it right away in that area, it's just going to throw everything off.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's quite interesting. And he's obviously very good at coaching. So, I think, yeah, something I'm thinking about these days. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That, I think I've heard him describe that entanglement as like, people have called it like the genius and madness Like,
Yeah.
or you're,
Kinda like a Jekyll and Hyde type thing.
oh, who's that?
You know her Jekyll and Hyde? It's like, the good and evil within us that kinda just
Yes.
makes us who we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or yeah, genius and madness, or I think you would call it your brilliance and your eccentricity, like your weirdness, your uniqueness.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. It's a great sorry to bring it back to journaling, but it's a great journaling prompt. I remember listening to him maybe in another podcast or a book. And at one point I journaled like, hey, what is my eccentricity? Like what makes me really weird? Like what is my uniqueness? Because yeah, there's a lot of power in that. And there is a lot of dysfunction. It's seemingly dysfunction, right? Because it's not quote unquote normal. It's like where in what aspects of life are you not in this middle of the bell curve where you're on the edge a little bit? And I think it's okay to lean into those things.
Right. Yeah, the other, kinda thing, um, that I didn't have written down or anything, but you talking about that made me remember it, how he was talking about how his life is kinda structured around, like, 4 hours of, like, optimal work, and the rest is just preparing for that optimal work, which it could be considered dysfunction in a sense, like, you're not being, like, super productive or anything, um, but, yeah, it's that balance of, like, when you're like working at the peak of your performance, and that kind of dysfunction allows you to be in the place to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, his I think says he like cultivates quality as a way of life or something like that. Yeah, actually, 2 days ago, I started tracking my deep work, like how much time, how many hours of deep work am I doing each day, and yeah, surprisingly, it's not that much, but even an hour and a half, 2 hours. I set a goal of 2 hours per day. Um, it's good to I think just think about. And it's funny, like you said, everything else is like catered to cultivating just that little bit of quality in
Yep.
the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Mhm. Cool.
I,
Yeah, that's it for me on the notes I had.
I had two more. One is that MIQ process. He often talks about it so quickly. So I wanted to just like bring it up again in case there are people who are interested in doing that exercise. I've done it a handful of times throughout the years. There was one period where I did it for, I want to say about a month and a half every day. And it was actually a really great
What is it?
exercise. Yeah. So the MIQ stands for most important question.
Mm.
And the basically what you do is near the end of the day, sometime after your day ends, quote unquote, to just sit down for a moment and think, what is the most important question that I'm trying to answer right now? Or what is one important question that I'm trying to answer right now? And you think about it a little bit and then you write it down. And whatever that question is, yeah, you just jot down, you try to find what's that big question I'm working on. And you write down the question and then you close your journal and you just don't even think about it. You go, you cook dinner, whatever your end of day stuff is, and then you sleep. And then the next morning, first thing in the morning, pre inputs. So maybe you could brush your teeth, whatever, do your meditation. But before consuming any information, you reopen that journal and you look at that question and you just try to answer it. You just start writing. And there's a lot that comes from, I don't know how it works. Maybe it's just letting your unconscious work on it overnight, or maybe it's what you're saying of like noticing some theme or putting your attention to some theme and then letting your mind do its thing and maybe catching it elsewhere. But man, I did it for about a month and a half and there were some really cool insights. And like, I felt like there was a lot of self awareness gained through the process. So yeah, I thought that was a really cool exercise to do. He said maybe don't do it like right before you sleep because then you might just be like consciously like thinking about it and it's keeping you up or whatever. But yeah, yeah, that was a cool journaling exercise.
I'm gonna start doing that. I don't even think I have a good answer for, like, what the like, I yeah. Like, you were talking about that, and I was like, "I don't even know if I have a good most important question I'm trying to answer right now," which
Yeah.
is very bad. So
And there could be many, I think it is a lot of pressure to say like what's the most important, but I remember sometimes I would write like, oh, most important question is this, and then I would write a few more and let me just pick this one. And it's an iterative process as a lot of these things are.
were a lot of the days, was it, like, the same thing a lot of days?
Um,
Or
I think there were some days where it repeated, and then
Mhm.
other days where it was just something random.
Right.
Yeah. The last note I have that made a big I had a lot of reflection about was this process versus outcome orientation. And I think
Mhm.
we've heard a lot about this, like, oh, it's about the process, not the outcome. And he said after he wrote The Art of Learning, he would find a lot of parents would go tell their kids, hey, go play your chess game. Doesn't matter if you win or lose. It's all about the process. And he said they leaned a little too hard, like the pendulum swung too much on the other way, where the kids going out there and they want to win and they're hearing their parents say, oh, don't worry if you win or lose, like it don't matter. It's just about the process. And he said that's not it's it's a little bit too much. And basically he said like, yes, it's all about the process, but the process matters because you're working towards an outcome
Mhm.
also. And so he said we still need to care enough about the outcome to be shattered. And I'm like, damn, he described it like you still got to put your ego on the line, where if you lose, like it's still gonna suck, you know. And he was just saying it's nuanced, and it's we have to care enough to about the outcome, but still be committed to the process. And man, it's really hard to hold both. And my reflection has been that in my competitions, I've only done a few, but I realized that I was caring way too much about the process. Like my whole thing was like, I'm just happy to do the competition. Like, I don't care if I win or lose. Like, I'm just so proud of myself for doing it. I was protecting my ego. Whereas when I lose, I could just say, dude, that's awesome. You went out there and did it. You know, like I protected myself. I didn't have to care so much about losing. I didn't get shattered. I didn't care enough. And so, yeah, I've got a competition coming up in a month and just thinking about allowing myself to care enough to be hurt to not get the outcome, you know? So it's gonna, yeah, it's kind of like I want to give myself permission to want to win, knowing that if I lose, it may hurt to lose. So yeah, it's kind of just interesting to think about.
Yeah, I think that's a really good I need to re-listen to this and put in more notes because as you're talking, I'm like, man, these would be great to be able to reference later on, you know, and for other
Yeah,
people to reference. And like, I think he even said something. It got me thinking, like, man, I should compete because he said, I think he even said like he doesn't respect people that don't put themselves in the fire or something like
right,
that. Yeah,
right.
I was like, dang, that hit hard.
Oh, I know it's scary, right?
Yeah, and then I was like looking up competitions and stuff, and I'm like, man, it's gonna cost me like 1,200 or $1,500 to like compete between like traveling between islands and like getting a room and the fee and everything. I'm like, maybe not lower on the line. But yeah, definitely I was like, man, I need to compete. So I was starting to look into it. And I don't think I am anytime soon, but yeah, it definitely got me thinking differently about it for sure.
No way. I think for the longest time since we've been recording this podcast, yeah, I've never asked if you had any interest in competing, but that's super exciting to hear. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe a way you could do it is like, man, Andres had us do like this thing where he had four of us and we simulated a few matches in the gym. Like one person play referee, one person play the scorekeeper,
Right.
and we would do the same ritual, like bring up the two guys, shake hands, all right, fight, you know, and he would keep score and everything. And then we would rotate and switch roles. So there were like four matches or whatever it was. And even though it was my friends, like we trained together all the time, and it still felt intense. I still rushed everything. I ended up in a triangle like in a minute. I was trying to pass so fast. You know,
Mhm.
normally like sometimes I'll chill, like tire them out a little bit. Um, but it was good practice. So maybe that could be a miniature way to do it. I don't know if you have people at your level enough to do that with, but maybe you can constrain yourself even in that fake competition of like no leg locks for me or whatever. Who
Right.
knows? But
Yeah. Yeah. I'm probably gonna do something like that. Yeah.
it's like a mini fire to put yourself in without having to
Mhm.
spend the 1,200 bucks or whatever.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Trying to figure out ways to like manufacture that environment and figure out ways to make it so I would be like embarrassed slash like hurt if I lost, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly.
Mhm.
That's really exciting. But damn, 1,200 to compete. Yeah, that's that's hefty.
Yeah. It doesn't seem smart. It would be a tax write off, but
But
doesn't seem like the best use of resources.
yeah, yeah. When we'll see if Mike and I can come out there to Lanai. We could do our mini version ourselves and
Yeah, that'd be fun.
just have fun with it, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, anything else? Did you watch the WNO event?
Yeah, so I actually this morning I just watched the Kynan versus Nicky Rod one because they posted on YouTube because I don't have Flow Grappling. And then of course I watched Gordon's videos he put
Yeah.
out, which were awesome. Like I think that he should keep doing stuff like that. It's so him where he gets to criticize people, but also it's super valuable for us all to watch and very timely too. So from a marketing perspective, I think it works well.
Right,
Uh,
right. The trends.
yeah, yeah. What were your thoughts on the event?
I thought it was really good. Like the whole event was really good. Um, yeah, I just finished making my video actually on it. But yeah, I thought there were a lot of cool takeaways. This video is gonna be like very tactical and like kind of bounce around a bunch, but I haven't done one like that in a while, so scratch that itch for all the nerds out there that want more details on stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, I thought the match was really good. I thought I learned a decent amount from the Owen Jones match. I like that match a lot. And then I like the Luke Griffith match a lot. Chris Wojcik, his leg lock was really good. Um, trying to think what else. There was some good loose passing um, in some of those matches. But yeah, actually, I could show you this. It might be cool for people to get an inside scoop. But since you're talking about that mount video from Gordon,
Hmm.
so been talking a lot recently about how to like limit rotation in given positions. Like from the back, I've talked about like grabbing the tricep, and then from that north south position, I talked about like grabbing underneath their shoulder to prevent them from rotating. But I think we can also encourage people to rotate with those same mechanics. So, like Luke was controlling from mount with a single chest strap, right? And Gordon talked about how when you are like the bottom person, you want to bridge to the side of the trapped arm to free it, right?
Hmm.
So basically, I think Luke knows the bridge is coming to this side, right? So like ideally you're able to bring arms out and away or across the body, right? So when he bridges, let me just turn off this audio because it's super annoying when I play it to listen to myself talk. I don't know if you could hear it, but so once Victor Hugo bridges, he grabs the shoulder and turns him more than he wants to go. So you're like basically can predict the bridge is going to come in that direction. You grab the opposite shoulder and you basically pull him that way. And then this creates back exposure because now the arm's across the body.
Hmm.
So yeah, just those same mechanics of trying to lift shoulders or pin shoulders to minimize rotation. Um, I think this is a good way to use it to encourage rotation to get arms across the center. And it's relatively predictable because you have a single chest wrap, you know which way they're going to bridge, and you just turn them more in that direction. I thought that grip on the shoulder was a good way to do that.
Yeah, dang, that's really cool. Um, on the when Nicky Rod had kind of mounted, and I think in the post interview he was talking about maybe he could have risked more, but he decided not to. Kind of related to your theme of managing risk in that worst case scenario,
Right.
because yeah, I mean it's kind of on the bottom person to risk more at that point, right? You could just shoulder on top and win the match
Yeah.
if your outcome is to win in that 15 minutes versus improve at competition like skills in 15 minutes or whatever. So
Yeah. It definitely seemed like neither one of them wanted to do anything.
yeah, yeah,
Nikki was just like, I'm not getting off. And kind of was like, not even really trying to get out. It didn't seem like so.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, like do you think do you think the right thing to do for those guys at the highest level is to risk more? And it just makes me think like, man, how was Gordon able to quote unquote risk more but still manage to just submit so many people? Is he just that much better? Like, has he trained that I don't know. I don't know how you're able to train risking more in competition, but still keep winning all the time. That's like pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is. It's very impressive.
Yeah.
um, but just kind of thinking about it from Nicky Rod's mindset. Like, he's coming off of a loss. So, like, especially if he did it early, like, if he mounted like, Kynan pretty much, like, dominated the initial part, and then Nicky mounted. So, I mean, just from his perspective, it kinda makes sense. Like, let me just hold this position, um, and make sure I win because I just lost, you know? So,
Mhm.
like, it makes total sense why he did it. Um, in terms of Gordon, I think he is, like he didn't submit Victor Hugo in ADCC, and he was like, John talks about how he was more upset that he didn't submit him than the, like, winning double gold, you know? So, like, um yeah, I think his standards are just, like, ridiculously high, and, it all like, I think it like, you hear them talk about it a lot. It's just, like, your confidence in, like I'm just speculating here, but, like, if Nicky were to lose the position, how confident is he that he's gonna be able to get back there?
Mhm.
Um, I don't know, but based on the fact that he just held it for, like, 9 minutes or whatever he did, makes me think that he wasn't too confident that if he lost it, he would be able to get it back. And I think Gordon is so confident that he's gonna get like if even if the worst case scenario happens, he's gonna get out. And if he loses a good position, he's gonna find a way to get back there. So yeah, I think it comes down to those things.
Yeah, it also felt like Kynan wasn't really trying to even get off one shoulder. And maybe he was afraid of back exposure. And Nicky Rod like is great from the back, it seems. So
Yeah.
both were playing to conservatively, I guess.
Both were playing to not get submitted. Well, I mean, Kynan was like, "I'm not getting submitted," pretty much, and then
Yeah.
Nikki was like, "I'm not losing this position." So it was just a stalemate, kind of.
Yeah.
Once they landed in that position. Um, yeah,
Yeah. Actually, Andres in our training has been saying this a lot. He's saying play to win, don't play to not lose.
yeah,
And because a lot of times in practice, like we're kind of a little more playful and okay, you got the sweep, I'll just give it to you, you know. Whereas in these private sessions he's been doing with our little groups, he's been really emphasizing the like fight tooth and nail for everything. And that's been a interesting mindset that I've been trying to like remind myself of. These like cues of like play to win, give it your all. Um, yeah, I've never felt what it was like to compete and come off the mat knowing I gave it my all. I have just haven't had that experience yet, and it's kind of scary to give it your all and still lose. But I think that would sting a lot less knowing you gave it your all.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna try to do that at the next competition.
Going back to Josh, it's kind of funny. He's become my like David Goggins voice in my head recently. Um, where like I think he was talking about ice baths being a good way to do this,
Yeah,
but like I think another like mantra he talked about was um, life is what happens on the other side of pain or something like that. Life is on the other side of pain was the way he like made it succinct. So like this morning we were running and I really didn't want to run. And I just kept telling myself life's on the other side of pain. He's my David Goggins voice right now.
dude,
But yeah.
that's so funny because I actually went on a run this morning and I really didn't want to run either. And the what entered my head was Alex Hormozy saying the effort is the reward.
Mm,
And I really like that. That's been my voice lately of like the tension of like having things to do, like having to put effort into because sometimes like, you know, working on so many things, there are some days where I feel the temptation to just take a nap, you know, put my head in the sand, ignore all the problems, like let me just not think about all this stuff, let me not be in all that tension
right.
versus like the tension is the reward, the effort, that feeling of efforting is the reward itself. Like that is where the dopamine we get. That is where we get the dopamine actually. So
I forget who like the way she said it, but I think Hormozy attributes it to his wife, Layla.
mhm.
Um, where when people are like stressed or something like that, she's like, "That's good. Like that means you're alive. If you're not stressed, you're dead." Like she was like, "We don't want dead people problems. We want like your life." So yeah, I think it's just yeah, finding whatever wording gets you through that like mental hurdle is very helpful.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of research on studies as it relates to journaling for athletes,
Mm,
or just writing, using writing as a tool. And one of them talks about self-talk and creating these like affirmations or focus phrases. And I'll probably put out an episode just talking about some of these studies themselves. But they found that self-talk definitely gives you a performance advantage over those who didn't use the self-talk interventions. But they found there's a distinction for high pressure situations. Using motivational cues like give it your all or I got this, those type of motivational cues worked really well for high pressure situations.
mm,
And then for more instructional cues, like what Greg would say, like remove what's pushing or like stay balanced, those types of cues work really well when you're working on a new skill,
mm.
um, versus like a high pressure situation. So I thought that was really interesting about doing that mental training as well and bringing that into the practice itself.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah. Oh, another one, another study, one of the best landmark studies on journaling for performance is about goal setting. And they, a lot of these takeaways are kind of like, duh, obviously, but people, athletes who wrote down goals performed way better than those who did not. And then they did a meta-analysis. I think it was like 36 or 37 studies, and they found this to be true across all of them with a pretty high standard deviation or whatever they call it. And then they looked into what types of goals and stuff, and they found like very specific goals that are moderately challenging, that are self-set versus someone else passed on to you, and also reflected on and like on progress, like you check into it regularly, helped. And they also said a combination of process goals and outcome goals help really well, specifically short-term process goals and long-term outcome goals. So maybe your long-term outcome goal is to win gold medal at ADCC or whatever, but your short-term process goal is I have to work a bunch of turtle and front headlock rounds in the next month or whatever your project is that you're working on. So yeah, lot of cool like takeaways about this mental game. It's been giving me a lot of ideas for that. But
mm.
yeah,
Very, very interesting.
yeah.
It reminds me like the motivational thing you remind me of, was Owen Jones listens to that, like, Ray Lewis video before.
Wait, which one?
He
We'll
just
have to
is like,
link it.
yeah, I don't yeah, I'll have to try and find it. I haven't, like, watched it myself, but you see it on the B Team channel, and it's just
Okay.
Ray Lewis, like, just screaming like, "It's a man's game to lose."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
just
cool to
getting
hear.
pumped up.
It like in the coach's corner, there's some of those highlight videos like who's that guy who like head kicked Kamaru Usman in that
Mm,
last minute? Leon Edwards, like man, hearing that footage of like you can't give up on yourself, like what's wrong with you, like blah blah blah, like it really helped him, I feel like in that last like high pressure round.
right,
Yeah,
quite interesting.
super cool. Any app developments for Outlier?
We were so frustrating because like, um, we were trying for like a week or two, we were trying to do the image thing where like you could upload an image to the chat and it identifies it. And it was just so hit or miss because, yeah, just we didn't think it would be that useful and we weren't optimistic that it was reliable enough to like actually push it. So we spent like a week and a half doing that and then just didn't end up doing anything with it. I don't think the technology's there because you upload the same image to our thing, and you upload it to ChatGPT, and it gives like relatively consistent answers, but they're just like hit or miss. Like you upload like a K guard, like a very distinct image of K guard, and then like sometimes our chat would be like it's K guard, and then sometimes it would be like it's a leg entanglement, like single leg X, and it's like all right. And then same thing with ChatGPT. Like you do it in the morning, and it's like it's K guard, and then like in the afternoon, it's like it's single leg X. The same picture. Um, so yeah, it was quite frustrating. We couldn't get that dialed, and then we moved on to trying to do like the beta version of that like streak kind of thing, where people would input what they wanted to work on, and then it would give them like a 7-day program or whatever. And kind of the same thing with that, like, it was just so hit or miss, and we had a decent amount of entries, like, I people were nice enough to give me, like, some, like, data that we could kinda test to see if it would be helpful or not, and it was, like, very hit or miss, so again, we didn't feel like it was ready to, and I think it's mostly, like, the tech like the technology side of it is not quite ready to do stuff like that. And again, we worked on that for like a week and a half and then nothing. And then like the thing that people are banging down our door about is one, getting some sort of like statistic thing in. So like the basic version of that would be like if you're searching butterfly half guard and then you just want to see the most popular hashtags with butterfly half guard, because right now we don't do that. It's just like all the hashtags are still there. So it's like, let me see, like there's 32 hashtag leg entanglements with butterfly half guard. There's 28 hashtag wrestle ups. There's, you know, whatever, 15 hashtag sweeps. So you can kind of get an idea of like the routes from there. People want that. And people want the coaching thing. Like that's just like people are like, we need it for coaching. So I think we're gonna try and tackle those two things. Cause like I just feel very frustrated right now that we spent like 3 weeks doing stuff that didn't work. And it's like, why are we spending this time trying to do things like this when people are banging down our door asking us to do these things? Like, just do the things people are asking. So, um, yeah, it's frustrating, but I think we're going to kind of put all those other side projects down and try and do these two things.
Yeah,
It's kind of our current plan.
very cool.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, yeah, we just released the new redesign. Since this is going to YouTube, many people may not have heard of it, but the journaling app that I'm talking about is called Sherpa. You can download it in the iOS App Store for free. And yeah, we just launched a redesign in a beta. So the current version, if you download it in the App Store, it's pretty shitty. I have five new people on, not new people, but five actual users on the beta and getting some feedback. And yeah, my single thing I'm focused right now on, the single metric I'm focused on right now is an engagement metric. Like, how can we increase the percentage of users who journal weekly? And so before trying to grow the app and spread the word so much, if people aren't going to use it anyway, like, how do I make something that people really want to use and enjoy using? And I think a lot of it, it's going to be based on these studies that I've been studying, the goal setting one, the self-talk one. How do we create a tool to use writing to create practices to actually help you improve at your sport? So yeah, some of that stuff's in the back of my mind now. Yeah,
Very cool. Yeah.
yeah, it's exciting. Mike had his first week on board last week as a technical co-founder, so I've been learning a lot. There's a lot of cool AI stuff. Oh, it reminded me what you were trying to build before. There's right now in a lot of the LLM stuff, the integration is like you have the LLM, you give it some instruction, and it gives you some output. But there's this talk about building agents where you can actually take the output, given it evaluate a value. You can evaluate the outcome and give it a score, and retrain the agent to say, "Hey, I think it's gonna be these four things. I think that K guard is single leg X or leg entanglement or K guard," and then you keep scoring it. It's K guard, whatever. In other ways, and you're helping the agent get smarter over time. So I think there are tools out there to help you with the evaluation process, but that's I think where the brunt of the work goes into training this
Yeah.
stuff, and it just takes a lot of time to evaluate. And then you layer in the complexity of jujitsu. It's just a hard problem to solve.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. It's just, yeah, again, it's like when to do that. I don't know when the best time is to
yeah,
put everything aside.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, how we're implementing something like an evaluation in ours is so we're gonna do a new insights feature. There's two parts of it right now. It's like the journal, has the AI aspect where for every 3 entries, it'll look at your last 30 days of entries and tell you what's going really well in your training and what's a big challenge you keep running into. We're going to update it so every Sunday you get an insight, and every Sunday it's going to give you last 7 days, 14, and 30. So it'll
Mhm.
refresh every week, something to look forward to. That probably won't be out for a little while, maybe like a couple months. But I want to put in some kind of feedback mechanism. I saw on Netflix the other day when you finish a show, it's like, do I like this? It's not for me, or do I love this? And then we can see for the people who love their insights, what are they doing differently than people who like don't get value from insights? And
Mhm.
maybe we can start to shape the product to make it easier to input better entries to get better insights. Um, So yeah, that's something I've been thinking about too. The second part of insights we're going to put in are these like milestone insights to help first time users get more value of the app and want to stick with it. So I'm going to give them like a little micro reflection on their first entry, second, third, fifth, and 10th. And hopefully that carries them through. And then the Sunday insights can pick up from
Mhm.
there. Yeah, just trying to make it so people who join find value faster with these little dopamine hits and hopefully get some better insights from it. More
I'm cu
AI to it.
I'm curious if you have a solution to this, because one thing, I've struggled with, because we have the ability to give feedback on our responses for our chatbot, but it's the same thing with ChatGPT, like, the responses are relatively long, and there could be some aspects that are good and some aspects that are bad, and it's just like thumbs up, thumbs down. I don't know
Yeah.
what to give it. Um, do you know, like, a good way to go about that? Or if, like, you can, like, implement feedback on, like, each section of it, or, like, yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard. I'm messing with the prompting right now for the Sunday insights, and I'm finding this the case. Like, oh, I really like the 7 day one, but the 14 one looks weird. I like the 30 day one. So you go back. So messing with the prompts has been helpful. I've been saying at first I was like, generate a 4 sentence response. The first sentence is this. The second sentence is something like this. The third is this. The fourth is this. And that worked for a bit, but it was a little rigid. Then I changed it to say generate a response that's 40 to 60 characters. Start with this, then mention this, then after that, mention this, end with a sentence like asking them a question or something. And that seemed to give it a little more flexibility. I also constrained it to make every sentence less than like 12 to 15 words
Mhm.
for readability. And then I said vary the sentence structure for readability and like pacing because you don't want like the same sentence length over and over. It just gets like monotonous to read.
Did
So,
you limit it to a reading level? Like,
oh
I've
no,
been
I
doing
didn't.
this, yeah. Like, for my newsletters before I run it, like, I run it through ChatGPT as to proofread it, and I just say, like, "Make this a 4th grade reading level." Um,
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't say that. I did tell it to match the user's tone.
Mm,
Yeah, because before it was
nice.
like, "Hey, champ, like you're doing a great job." And I'm like, "Dude, all right, this is a little over the top." Some
That's
people like
funny.
it, some people don't. But maybe if I just match the user a little bit, it'll feel like a language that they resonate with. So, man, I'm giving away all the secrets here, but it's all good.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
like that idea. Yeah, the matching the tone is really smart.
Yeah, it's been
Cool.
fun. But yeah, maybe we wrap up there before we give away all our trade secrets, the
Yeah.
rest of them.
Tune in next week for
Tune
more.
in next week for more. Exactly.
Cool.
Cool, cool.
Alright. Later, Josh.
See ya.